All right. Hey, y'all. So, tonight we are doing interview style, and I am here with Tara. And tonight we are going to be talking about homeschooling and getting into homeschooling. While everybody is coming into the room, I'm going to give people just a few minutes. Hey, ROTDT podcast. All right, y'all. So I have my Hey Y'all mugs in my link below. Also, if you would like to become a Patreon, you can also hit that link below to support my content. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I see that some people are slowly coming into the room. So again, we have Tara here with us. And Tara, so go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, some of your interests, what you kind of do, and things like that.
All right. I'm Tara. Um, I am from West Virginia, and we currently live in Kentucky. It's myself, my husband. We have a 1-year-old named Vivian, a 6-year-old LB, little Brian, and I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter also. Um, I've been married a long time, 8 years, 8 years now. Went to school for chemistry and worked in pharmaceuticals for maybe 5 or 6 years. After LB was born, my heart wasn't in that anymore. Left to stay home at the same time when my husband and I opened a gym. And now we have a gym, and in the back, we actually have an NTI Learning Center because here in Lexington, public school kids are still virtual learning, at least until January. And yeah, and I homeschool LB. I had them all signed up to go to public school, and I thought about homeschooling them. I was like, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and public school them. Like that's what I know. I'm comfortable with it. I'll volunteer at the school. COVID hit, and I was like, nah, just go homeschool.
Girl, I think you the only black person I know from Kentucky.
I'm not from here. I'm just here, but
Well, you
probably more
moved
black
there.
people here than in West Virginia. So
Really? Okay. So you say you have two children and a stepchild, like
hmm
that's 13. Is that
hmm
correct? What
yes.
is the 13-year-old currently doing? Do they live with you guys full time or they live with the other
No, she
parent?
lives with her mom full time in West Virginia. So she's
Okay.
doing virtual public school. And I think one thing that made it so easy for me to make the switch with my son is that he was going into kindergarten this year. So with my stepdaughter, she had already been in public school. She had her friends. She knew some.
Oh, I see. I
With
see.
my son, this was all going to be new to him. And
Right.
Kentucky was real back and forth, especially like our city and our county. The kids didn't know they were not going back in person until like late July, August. And they keep it's just been a lack of information. I feel like I was like, I don't want to be feeling like I'm waiting for somebody else to make this decision for me. I don't
Mhm. Mhm.
they don't know what they're doing, so I'm gonna keep my son home because I'm
Girl, that's absolute like you saying some of the same things that I'm like, I'm not a parent, but this just makes sense to me. Like if I'm in this position, I want to do what's best for my child. I'm not going to when it comes to something like life and death. And this is when I say that it's not about necessarily the survival rate of COVID or anything like that, but it's more so even just dealing with something as a virus, the government, telling us, oh, this is so serious, yet putting all the trust in them to make these decisions when we've seen all these failures. I'm like, if I was y'all, I just don't think I would let y'all make that decision for me. Like, I just don't see
yeah, and
how that would add up.
not like able like I can be home and teach him. So I know a lot of people, especially if they have two parents working outside of the home, like it was not an option for them. But I felt like if they do go back in person, it makes it a safer environment for the parents who don't have a choice. If the parents who do have a choice give their kids some space, it's easier to space out 20
Mm.
kids in a classroom than 30. So I kind of feel like not only is it what's best for my child, it's also doing my part for kids whose parents don't have that option.
Mm. And so tell us a little bit about how you actually got like so we know you kind of made that decision as far as like a COVID thing, but I mean you still it's still not something you had to do. So what made you just finally or what made you interested or even feel like you're capable of doing it? Some people don't they it never even crosses their mind like you could literally teach your own child.
See, I think this is why I was really excited to do this because it would have never crossed my mind except for last year, it might have been 2 years ago. We got neighbors that moved in across the street, and she homeschooled her children. They were military, they moved around a lot, so it made sense. And at the time, LB was in preschool. You know, he went to school like 2 days a week when I was pregnant with Vivian, and I loved how like her son was like 7, and he would be outside. They'd be sitting under a tree doing school on a nice day. And you know, it'd be like a nice fall day. Like, you know, 2 days ago here, it was like 70 degrees, but today it's like 50. And all the kids, even the kids that are doing virtual learning now, they were in school at their computer because they have set times they have to be in school. So I just like the freedom that she had with her kids. And they seemed very happy. I knew that the boy was very intelligent, you know, because he would come over and talk to us. I knew he could spell, write his name. So that got me kind of interested. So I would just ask her questions now and then, and she was really encouraging. She'd always say like, anybody can do kindergarten. She's like, start at kindergarten. You're thinking about like, what are you going to do for middle school and high school? She's like, it's kindergarten. It's not MIT. You know, it's not that serious. You know, all you got to
Mhm.
do is get him reading and doing some simple math. He's probably already starting a lot of that. So I had started thinking about it and praying on it, and I was just like, oh, I just don't know. Like, I almost had like fear of missing out for him. Like, all his little friends are going to be at the public school. Like, we're walking distance from our public school too. So I'd be like, oh,
Mhm.
I'll be there like at the playground, and is he going to feel like he's missing out? Like, I don't want him to feel like I kept him from that fun thing. Like, I was a public school child, and a lot of my good memories are there. But also, then I thought about all the times that public school was a distraction from learning for me. And so, anyways, long story short, I would talk to people about it, and everybody was like, oh, well, you need to socialize them. That's everybody's thing for homeschooling, socialization, as if like homeschooling means you're going to lock your kid in the closet. Like, no, I'm just homeschooling. We can do other things.
Right.
But it got in my head. It really did, because I was like, you know, this is something that I'm comfortable with and that I know. I know public school. I can send them here. I'll volunteer. I'll get some free time. Like, you know, that was really interesting for me. Like, that was really exciting for me. So I was like, you know, I'm going to just send them to public school. I signed them up. COVID hit. And they sent the public school kids, and even LV's little private preschool, they took 2 weeks off as a shutdown for COVID. And that turned into the rest of the school year. And LV's preschool teacher would like send us a list of what they would have done that week. You know, so they'd be like, oh, this would have been our letter of the week, and we would have done this song, and here's a YouTube link. And so we were kind of doing stuff like that. And I would
Mm.
find free worksheets for the letter of the week. And I was like, this is not bad. And he's still learning and progressing. And as summer kind of started, and it became more and more obvious that this virus isn't going anywhere, and either the kids will be going back in masks and social distancing and things will be a lot different and not fun, or they're going to be doing virtual stuff on the computer. It just came to that decision for me. And as more details about virtual came out, like there were set times they would have to log on, I was like, if I do it myself, I can make my own schedule. Vivian is so young, and right now, this is the thing a lot of people don't know about homeschool versus public school. Kindergarten takes like 45 minutes to maybe an hour and a half a day to school at home. It does not take a full 8 hour day. So we
I'm
do,
so glad you said that.
yeah, so we can do all of our homeschool stuff when Vivian is taking a nap, like all of the actual instructional stuff and him sitting down and writing. And then when she's awake, we still do learning stuff to keep her engaged and excited, but it's more like the game stuff we'll do. And just that freedom, and the fact that, like, you know, if it's a nice day, um, we can just go outside, and we can skip that day and make it up Saturday when it's raining if we want to. It's just that freedom and control over it. I have no regrets. So I am not thankful for this virus. You know, I wish it was gone,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I'm thankful to be homeschooling right now, because it opened my eyes to, like, it's easy to get in your head and think, oh no, I'm gonna mess this up. Like, I'm gonna mess up my kids' education. I know how important
Mhm.
that has been the foundation that has gotten me where I am. It's gotten my husband where he is. But when you take all that pressure off, and you're teaching one kid that you know personally, the
Mhm.
things they need to know. It's so easy. Like I can do a
One
math.
thing one thing I'm glad that you mentioned is the time that it takes to actually sit there and do what they do in a classroom all day. I really want people in the chat to like take note of that, cuz something I've always said, I believe if you stick a child with me for give me 6 years, I can teach that child the same thing these kids come out learning in 12. You have so much time wasted. And I say this as somebody that's worked in the public schools. It's a lot of wasted time, whether we're talking about the amount of students, whether we're talking about some of these, schools that's just not as good, and you have teachers that have to be the disciplinarian, the counselor, the shoulder to lean on. They have to do all these things, and then even the some of the curriculum for the older students. When you're looking at it, and it's like, what are you gonna actually do with this in real time? So it's a lot of wasted time, and I just think about the benefits of if you could take a child and, like you said, working with your child, doing that an hour and a half a day, then what if you spent the rest of the time working on his talents, his interests, whether he wanted to learn a different language, play a sport, play an instrument, right? Even learning life skills like gardening, planting, like other things that you do that we'll talk a little bit about too. Um, but I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's a key point I really want people to take home. So, what was the process like with actually? Did they make it easier because of COVID to start homeschooling? Is the process the same, and what does that look like?
So it's the same here, but Kentucky is a pretty, I don't know, it's
Relaxed.
pretty relaxed. All you have to do for LB did not turn 6 until November, so I didn't have to do anything. He's not required to be publicly, privately, or homeschooled until he is 6 before August.
Okay. Mhm.
So, but if your child is older, or if I wanted to, all you have to do is write a letter of intent. I found a sample one online. You have to name your school. So we named ours Leggett Academy. You put the children and their ages and the school year and that you're going to homeschool them, and you mail that to the superintendent of your county, I think, and that's it. That's it.
And and do you have, so you mentioned the curriculum. Do you have to follow this to the T? And I know he's young, so are they testing for any measures to say,
Kentucky
he
not, to my knowledge, at least definitely not at this age. They don't have any testing that you have to take your homeschool child to. They do ask that you keep samples of your child's work, and they can audit it, I think, once a year to just
okay.
make sure the child's doing work and is learning at a certain pace. But yeah, there's no testing here. I know some states you have to take your kid in for like standardized testing, and you have to submit work. In Kentucky, they ask you to keep a report card for each semester, and basically you just file that away and see if they will. If they come and audit you. I know that sounds like scary to a lot of people, like, oh my gosh, you could just be
They're
going.
gonna knock on your door and they're coming to make sure you're not hiding the kid in the basement.
Right. I don't know anybody in Kentucky that homeschools that has
Okay.
ever been audited for their
Oh, okay.
homeschooling. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And I do have like a little binder, but I keep that anyway so that I can see like how his handwriting has progressed. And like, on a day where it's like, okay, today was a rough day. Let me go back a month and remember that he couldn't do any of this a month ago.
Mhm.
But yeah, the laws here are really relaxed. And I appreciate that because if you are a parent that is considering homeschooling, you're putting enough pressure on yourself. Like, I mean, I was up at like 2 a.m. looking at different curriculums that I could use for him and just really panicked. Like, the last thing I needed was to feel like the state was breathing down my neck.
Mhm. Mhm. And so do you know like is homeschooling
Uh oh, hold on. I lost you. I can't hear.
okay.
Can you say something? Let me see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Give me 1 second.
Okay. India said how many hours are homeschooling each day. So she basically said that to do their entire curriculum, what they would do at 8 hours at the school, it takes her about an hour and a half to complete it each day. And the rest of that time she could use doing like fun stuff and things like that.
I'm
Okay, there you are. It's okay.
My phone started acting up. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Okay, so I forgot where we were.
We
So,
just discovered like state guidelines here,
mhm.
and
Oh, I was asking, is homeschooling pretty popular in Kentucky?
yes and no. I know there's like a few homeschool co-ops here in Lexington.
Do
There's
you
even like
participate in any
I do
co-op?
not right now because of coronavirus,
Oh
but
yeah, that's
yeah, if that was not a factor, I would probably participate or create one that I liked. But I will say that as far as homeschool moms, like women of color that homeschool here, I don't see very many. I think I like searched online and found maybe 9 or 10, and we have like a little Facebook group that's here in town. Um, I,
okay.
I know in Louisville there's a very large homeschool co-op up there that's mostly women of color, and so I think it's a little more popular in Louisville. But yeah, it's sparse here.
So let me ask you this, was the only negative feedback because you had thought about homeschooling kind of before this point,
Mhm.
before COVID, but you never went through with it.
So a lot of the negative feedback was old socialization, and my son is pretty shy and very sensitive anyway. So like when people would say that is negative feedback, I really felt that. But I mean, I had positive reasons for homeschooling that I thought homeschooling is better because of this, and also negatives like I feel like these are negatives about public school that I don't want my son in his life. So
Mhm.
anytime I would mention a negative about public school, people would be like, "Oh, well, you went, and you were fine." It's like, yeah, but I remember like spending whole class periods stressing about some little social stuff and not learning anything as well. So but anytime I would talk to anybody and say I don't want this aspect of public school in my children's lives, they'd be like, "Oh, well, but you're missing out on this, this, and this, and they're going to have such a good time. I feel like they're missing out. It's hard to socialize." But if I would talk to somebody about the positives that homeschooling can bring, there would never be any debate. So that's my suggestion. If you are set on homeschooling, or if you're thinking about homeschooling, do your own research, because if people have never homeschooled and never thought about it, they're just going to come at it from a, oh, you're going to be one of them weird people that keep your kids at home. Do your own research. And when somebody who is not a homeschool parent and not open minded about homeschooling asks you about it, only talk about the positives that schooling brings. Don't talk about the negatives of the school system, even though there's so many, especially for my son is a black boy in Kentucky. So there's a lot of negatives that come with that anyway, whether people want to acknowledge them or not. But I I table those when I'm talking to people who do not homeschool, and I just talk about the positives that homeschooling brings.
That's really a good point in you giving advice of people how to address these situations because I'm sitting here, I'm feeling some type of way because even when it comes to different topics, somebody in the comments, this was Bruce, he said the whole socialization argument made for public schools is really indoctrination in disguise, right? So on my channel, oftentimes I talk about how a lot of the content that they push into the schools, but even you talking about the difference of how we have these conversations, because I don't care, it's funny, I don't care whether it's politics, whether it's school, whether it's the way you eat, whether it's you working out, whether it's any type of anything that's different or goes against the grain, particularly for people like us, whether people want to admit it or not. And this is another reason why I think it's important we had these conversations, because people assume like, oh, if I didn't see that on TV, if everybody else is not doing it, if it's not the popular way, then it's not the right way. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so people will project on you. They will project on you. You could talk about, and I know you and your husband do a lot of things, but even when us entrepreneurs, and I'm like very small and just getting started, but people can be so discouraging, and they project on you. And I'm like,
But so much of that, I feel like, and I know I said I'm not going to knock public school, but I feel like so much of that comes from public schooling. It is drilled into us that these are the things that make you successful. And those things are that you are educated by a public school, or by you have formal education, and then you go to college, and then you get a good job.
but
That
the
is,
crazy thing is, this is the part that bothers me, Tara. The crazy thing is people say that, but then you turn around and tweet and hashtag all day about the system being racist, trying to escape the system, trying to escape oppression, but then you are still stuck on this system is the only way. Like, something's not adding up.
yeah.
So which one is the truth? You know what
Right,
I
because they
mean?
teach you a certain way for a reason, like sitting, even being at school for however many hours a day. Kindergarten in a lot of places used to be a half day. Now
I
it's a
don't know
full.
how we did that. Looking back, do you know now, like me as an adult sitting in a lecture 3 to 4 hours, if I'm not interested in what you're saying as an adult, I check out. I'm ready to go. Now I look back and be like, Lord, like I don't even know how I used to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much. And when you step outside of it and really start looking at it and open up your mind and read what other people say about homeschooling or about anything that's like against the grain, when I have to like humble myself, because I'm like, I was raised good. I went to good
Mhm.
public schools. I went to college. I did this. Like, I get it, but I can't be defensive about it, because there are other ways that a lot of times, if there's gonna be a better outcome for my child, I'm gonna do it. And I really feel like I don't want to teach him that it's important to sit at your desk and be still and listen to something, especially something you already know, right? Because I mean, of course, I'm gonna say my son is very bright, but he went to preschool, so
Mhm.
he can already read. Like, we're adding numbers above 10 right now, and like he wouldn't be doing that at public school at this point. So
Because you have like you said, you have these 30 students in this class, and you have to pick a pace that fits, right? It's like an average, and so it's a disservice to the child that's the most fast pace and the child that's working at the slower pace. It's just a huge, you know, I think she tapped that again. We'll wait till she come back. Shane said America had homeschooling for over 200 years until the government got involved. India said, I think oftentimes people use public school to babysit their kids, not really teach them. Homeschooling is a great way to stay active and involved in your kid's life. The interesting thing you said about babysitting, India, is that something I mentioned. Tara, we can't see you, but India, something that I mentioned is that it's so important, man, even for the moms that can't uh for whatever reason, you can't afford to homeschool, you don't have the opportunity or the support to homeschool. It's very important to still be hands on with your children and involved with what they're doing. And I'm at the point where I just don't lend excuses to people anymore, because when these kids get home from school, they're sitting in front of the computer anyway. So it's no reason they can't be learning a skill while they're on YouTube, learning another language. Some of these resources are free.
a
You
lot
know
of
what I
resources
mean?
are free. You can get whole curriculums for free. I know a lot of. I joined some Black homeschool groups on Facebook, and a lot of the moms there, and fathers too, homeschool at either after work or they
Mhm.
homeschool majority Saturday and Sunday. Now,
Right.
you still end up needing childcare during the week if you work
Mhm.
outside of home. So if you don't have family around, that's very difficult. And you can't really send your kid to public school and then tell them on your weekend, I want you to do this too, because then your child's burnt out. So I know it's easy for me to say because I'm not in a position to have to do it in a more difficult way, but it is possible. Like, don't write anything off. If that's something you want for your kid, there is a way to do it.
And so tell us a little bit like what your actual daily routine looks like. So what would a day look like from you for
Uh,
you and your family start waking up?
So So Brian gets up, he starts working at the gym at 5 a.m. So he's out before we even thinking about getting up. LB gets up around 7, and then Vivian doesn't get up until like 9. So well, sometimes 8, but usually like 9. So when LB gets up, he likes to wake up slow. So he comes in, he wants to snuggle, he might want to watch a TV show, we'll have some yogurt and some milk, like a light breakfast. We really just chill until Vivian gets up. Then when she gets up, we get dressed. And that's like when I do housework and stuff too. But then she gets up, we get dressed, we go downstairs, and I put out what I call morning work the night before. So it'll be like today it was a worksheet where he was tracing and writing November. And then it was a coloring sheet, and I think it was like a color by numbers. So it's like a slow warm up, like it gets his mind thinking and stuff. Then we try to do like something that could be a fun activity. Like yesterday, we did sight word jumping, or actually reading jumping. So it was like I laid words out on the floor, and he could only jump to the next one if he could tell me what that word said. So we do stuff like that when Vivian's up. We do science experience when she's up. We do like sensory things when she is awake. And then around lunchtime, and we go outside a lot when like in the morning. Around lunchtime we'll eat, she goes down for a nap, and that's when we actually hit the real book. uh,
Okay.
so he can like he'll read to me sometimes in the early morning, but most of our stuff happens between like noon and 1 or 1 and 2, and that's when we'll do every day we do math and language arts, because I feel like those are most important for kindergarten. And then we sprinkle stuff in other days. But the freedom I think that comes from homeschooling is if Viv's not napping and she's fussing, we're not going to do it until Brian gets home. If it's a bad day, like if I tell LB to read a book and he looks at a sight word he's known for 3 weeks and he can't tell me what it is, I'm not going to be frustrated with you. I'm not going to be
Mhm.
like, if he had 5 apples, I'm not that parent.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Or we can take a break and like run around. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, our brain's not working. Let's run around the house real quick and then start again. So it's really, we're really relaxed with it. Like today, I want to go to a planetary. So we did math, and he told me he wanted to learn about bears. We watched a video about bears and talked about them. Sometimes we'll do a craft, and I was like, all right, let's go.
That is so
Like
awesome. That is so
learn
awesome.
every they learn everywhere. Like
Right.
I bought something today and got change. And so we've already gone over counting money and stuff, but like explaining to him that process of getting change, and like this is only 51 cents, but if you put it with another 49 cents, that's $1. Like here, you can have this change and put it in your bank. Um, a kid can learn anywhere.
And then just the freedom of not feeling pressure and kind of having that room to take a breath and grow and come back to it. They're not on this, like, we got to do this because our English period is from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And then we got
Yeah,
to do, and
I'm
so,
And I mean, if Vivian is having a really chill morning, if she's just like, sitting in her hot chair eating her Cheerios, we might crack the book open then and start. But I that's something that I've had to do with myself. I think people call it unschooling or deschooling. Like for me, it'd be like, all right, this is what is on the list for today. I want to get it done. But why? Because then it'll be like the next day, we'll fly through the work in 10 minutes. We could have done what we didn't do on a bad day then.
right,
And
right.
who am I keeping up with? It's a mindset shift for me as a parent,
Hmm.
because I'm thinking, okay, this is what you should know about kindergarten. But if my kid knows second grade math and he's struggling a little bit in reading, that's okay because we have free.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, it's just a mindset thing. I struggle with it more than him because he's never been in public school. So he's like, this is great,
He
mom.
doesn't even know, right? He doesn't even know how it's supposed to go. He's just living life and having fun. It's crazy because a few years ago when I used to volunteer for this reading program working with kids, we would work on their reading skills. And one day, I was just talking to my group and they were like, they would call me Miss Rhonda. Miss Rhonda, Miss Rhonda, like, why wouldn't you be a teacher? And I just told them, I was like, y'all, if I was ever a teacher, I could never do it in a public school forum. I just couldn't do it because it's so systematic. It's so systematic. And I've never even people, I have some people that even try to treat me like a lot of the stuff that I talk about now is like so new. It's not new. I've always kind of been a person that I just don't I just don't like systems. And a lot of people say that, right? Oh, we got to break the system. We got to change the system. We got to lead a system. And I'm like, y'all say it, but you don't kind of take the model to move away from it, right? Like even thinking we have to do this at this time, do this at that time. I have to know this by this time, or I have to be just as equally good in all these areas, and even just these tests that are really just all memorization. Even me, is so funny because I often tell, my YouTube friends in the chat right now, if I was would have been a teacher, I probably would have been a history teacher. But then when I think about it, I don't think I would have made a really good history teacher because I can never remember. Like my memory is trash. It's just terrible. So it's really hard for me to remember like dates and people's names and stuff like that. But I remember concepts. I remember concepts. If I learn a concept, I have it forever, right? And so, do I deserve to flunk the freaking history test because I don't know that this war or this person did this on this date, or do I need to know what that period in history, the overall theme of it? You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really just challenging these concepts in our mind of the way to do things. And I oftentimes think the system leads us the wrong way on purpose anyway.
Right, because
You
the
know?
whole like I remember having these tests where it'd be like, what date did this happen? What was the name of this treaty? Blah blah blah. I get that like some of that is important to know, but in reality, what makes a society better as a whole is knowing the story of what happened and what the lesson is from it, so we don't forget.
Right.
And we obviously
Exactly.
do that as a society because you can see trends that happen over and over again.
Mhm.
And it's because we're focusing on dates instead of themes and lessons. In my
Mhm. So, how, like, what do you actually do for work right now? Are you working with your husband in the gym? Are you just full-time homeschooling? What does that look like?
So I feel like I'm full time homeschooling, but like today when I went to that plant nursery is because I had to run up to the state capitol to, well, not the capital, but to Frankfurt to drop off a payment to get our NTI center to become a permanent child care center. So I run errands and stuff for the business. And before COVID, I did a lot of our marketing, but we I mean, our gym could always have more people, but it's safer if we just keep our current clientele in there, so we're not doing as much marketing. So I say I'm full time homeschooling, stay at home mom, and I feel like that until I compare some of my days to another homeschool stay at home mom, and I'm like, oh wait.
So, I just lost my thought. What was I about to ask you? So, what you're doing with your plants, and so it's kind of like a hobby.
hmm Yeah, it started around the time COVID started. I just, you can't go anywhere. So I have a friend that lives up the street, but we were social distancing. So we didn't see each other all of March. And I would like see her Insta stories and she had all these plants. And I'm like, I want to take care of something that doesn't ever yell at me or wake me up at night. So I got a plant. And then it just kept going. And like, this is one that my friend gave me like clippings of a few months ago. And so it's just grown and grown and grown. And yeah, I don't know. It's something peaceful about it that like there's all this chaos going on outside in the world, but my plant's just going to grow at the same speed it was going to grow no matter what was happening.
I really want to get into gardening, and I think soon I'm gonna have somebody that comes on the show to talk about gardening as well. Uh, but I just don't sit down enough right now to do
There's
gardening. I'm like all over the place.
yeah.
I travel too much. I'm moving too much. I'm doing this. I'm doing that, and so I haven't gotten to the point where I can do it yet. But it's on my list. It's definitely something that I want to get into eventually.
And what part of where are you living?
I'm
You
in
in
Mississippi.
Mississippi. Okay. So
Yeah.
kind of a plus, like
Mhm.
we had to herd all our house plants inside in Kentucky or else they would just freeze over and die. But like
Really?
how you are, the easier things are. So, and especially if you're talking about gardening and food, I've been doing that for probably 5 or 6 years. A lot of that you put that in the ground and God handles it.
Girl, it sounds so fun, and I can't wait. But it's definitely something I want to get into. So, overall, what would you say your experience with homeschooling is, and give me the best thing about homeschooling and the worst?
Best thing
Worst.
is the freedom. Like, even when we talk about like gardening, like that's something I love to do for me, but it's also a lesson for my kids, like basically everything you do in your life, your kids can learn from. If you're cooking, if you're gardening, if you're whatever. So I love that. And I also love seeing him learn because there's a difference between picking my kid up from preschool and them telling me he's very bright. He's picked
Mhm.
up stuff really fast and seeing it firsthand and like the excitement in his face when he sees that I'm excited, I feel like our bond has really grown. So the freedom and like watching him learn firsthand are the positives and how it is. I don't know, it's not helped our relationship. It wasn't bad, but I feel like we're on like another level than we were when he was in preschool. But the only con is just FOMO, just fear of missing out. Like, is my kid gonna miss out on something? Am I gonna feel like we missed out? Am I gonna feel bad about it? But I think that's with anything. I feel like that about leaving my corporate job too. And people thought I was crazy for that too. But at the end of the day, if I want to homeschool my child to a plant nursery in the middle of the day, then you got to make some changes. Solid trade offs. So that's really the only negative, and that's in my head.
One thing I really wish, and I know this will never happen, it's just me shooting in the dark here, but I really wish people would stop projecting onto other people and allow them to have their own ideas, opinions, thoughts, lifestyles, particularly for us, right? It's like we're not allowed to think certain things, do certain things, say certain things, have certain lifestyles. Like even you mentioning that about leaving your job. Like I used to, I mean, years and years ago, I used to always tell my parents, I used to always tell my friend, like my very close friends, like, I'm going to work for myself. I don't want to work for anybody else. I just don't. I just don't. I just never have. You know what I mean? And people think that's so arrogant. And I think it's just so foolish.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
Okay, I can't see.
Obviously, my parents, want the best for me, but even them, it's this, well, this is what we've seen in this box, and this is what people do, so we know this works. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't make it the only thing. So I'm just starting to see a lot of parallels here from, you know, kind of not following. I don't even want to say it's necessarily not following a trend because it's not like ooh, I want to be different. You know what I mean? I think it's just more so like, I don't want to be in these systems that have been handed to me. I may want more freedom in some of these areas.
Right. And it's easy to get boxed in. Like people assume things about you because you're an American and because you're in the South and because you're black. They're like these are the parameters you can live in.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I really feel like it's something that I've seen from both sides too, because I don't necessarily, I felt really trapped working set 8 to 5, even though I was paid very well. But for
Mhm.
somebody else, that's their dream. They want that money.
Right.
They can have that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's hard for me not to be like, you really about to sit at that desk for 8 hours?
Girl, let me tell you, that was so depressing for me. Like, I'm the type of person, I will take a salary cut for more freedom, to be able to sleep in an extra hour, to be able to, maybe I want to stay up last night reading something or watching my favorite show, or maybe I want to go to the gym late, or maybe I want to work this Sunday right there. Um, but even because I've been following you on Instagram for years, and I could just tell looking at your page, I'm like, she's a go-getter. Like, she's always working, she's always getting it. I don't care what it is, even with your plants, even though it's a hobby, but I could tell it's something that you're really serious about. So, what tips do you have for people that would like to, or that are thinking about getting into homeschooling, maybe considering it?
So my first tip is for homeschooling or for anything that kind of weird that you're planning on doing. Like, it was the same tip I give moms who want to birth naturally or unmedicated, or if you're breastfeeding your family, don't anything. Do not look for comfort in other people. You know, if you tell somebody that this is what you want to do and they start projecting their insecurities on you, back out of that conversation, because
Mhm.
you feel bad and you're already teetering because you're trying to make a decision. Let that decision come from you, and find resources online, because no matter how crazy whatever you're thinking about doing, somebody else has done it. And we got the internet in our hands majority of the time. So find support systems so that you can learn. Um, Second tip is to check out your state laws to make sure that you have everything covered so you don't have anything else to worry about. And third, and probably most important thing is, I read a quote the other day that was like, how would you feel if your kid compared you to other people's parents all the time? So this is a hard one for me, but like, I don't need to be looking at what other kindergartners are doing or not doing right now. If I look at it, it's cool because we're on par, but or ahead. But kids can't really be ahead or behind. Like, know your child and teach your child. As long as they're progressing every day, then it's fine. So those are my tips.
I really liked, those were some awesome tips, very helpful, I'm sure, to a lot of people in the room. Something I liked, you mentioned about basically like using the internet, and it's actually funny because my mom just asked me a couple of days ago. She was like, "Rhonda, didn't weren't you weren't you vegan for a while or something like that?" And she was like, "Why aren't you anymore?" And I was like, well, I think it's kind of similar to usually when you have people around you doing stuff, it's kind of easier, especially if you're inquisitive, you're curious, to kind of move into those things. But with the internet, it does help expand and help you. You're able to, it's like little communities, you know what I mean? And you're able to reach out to people, to network and to get information. So even you talking about this with homeschooling, you can reach people. There are resources, and you can probably reach any type of people that you're looking for. I'm sure there are co-ops and groups, Facebook groups for probably children that have autism, and just all type of resources. So that's definitely something to think about. Hey, Gab, thank you for the super chat. Um, but I'm so thankful for you coming on today and sharing with us. Here over on my channel, I'm really trying to move into more of these stories that will, you most likely, especially pre-COVID, won't be invited, on these mainstream platforms to talk about these stores and things like that. They try to make it seem like certain people, are far and few in between, in the shadows, don't exist and things like that. So, um, I just want to make sure I'm moving towards more of these stores. And even I'm trying to go into this direction to really inspire people to move back towards a lot of the ways of our ancestors when it comes to autonomy and freedom, because it's super easy. It's super easy to hashtag, oh, systemic oppression and the system and it's broken and all these things. It's way harder to be responsible and committed to your own child each and every day. And so some people are going to take the steps to move away from these systems, even if we're talking about the job, right? You may not like your boss, you may this and that, but it's easy to go in there and sit in that box and get that paycheck. It's harder to be dependent and committed on yourself. But who you wake up when you want, you ain't got to answer to nobody. You don't have to worry about nobody talking to you crazy. You know what I mean? And so it's just a certain level of freedom uh and responsibility that I want people to at least be open to talk about, and then know that the people doing it are here. Like, you exist. And so we
And
need to
like
talk.
normal people, not in a cult or anything crazy.
Right. We know. We gotcha.
Some
Not
be like,
crazy.
homeschool. Oh, you one of them. No, I'm not. I'm just a
But it's
normal person.
but even that, right? Even that, like, but even though we're saying it in like a joking way, who told us that? Who's creating those narratives, right? Who's doing it? Who taught us that homeschooling equals cult, equals crazy, equals people that don't look like us, equals not a young mom, equals not a plant mom, equals not a hot mom, okay? So it's like, or a dad, it could be a dad. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of stories out here, and we really have to question, why have these things already been packaged in our head that and it coming with negative connotations, you know?
Right. Because it seems like anything that could be negative for us or that can keep us cycling money through the system, they tell us that's for us
Right,
over and over and over. And when you try to
right.
do anything that gets you out of that situation, it's like, you gonna do what? No,
Yes.
no. Like, yeah, like let me explore it. Maybe I'll hate it and want to go back to it's not like
Right.
public school going anywhere,
It's
you
not
know?
going anywhere. It will be there.
And that's the thing. I think sometimes we have this mindset like I have to make a decision for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you really don't with most things. I mean, other than marriage and having children, there's nothing you have to decide forever.
Right.
So you got to figure out where the fear is from taking a different step because it's you always have choices. It's not like you're going to take a step and you have no more choices anymore, you know?
Right. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that is pretty much it. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you want to shout out like your Instagram or any of your social media?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Tara.Yvette. Tara has two R's. Don't ask me why. And yeah, I mean, you can follow our shenanigans. We talk about homeschool a lot because that's what I'm doing now. I talk about plants a lot because that's my new hobby. But I try to talk about a lot of things that I do that if you just saw me in passing, you might not know, but people would think these are not things that I would do or somebody like me would do. Like I cloth diaper my daughter. I'm still
Do
breastfeeding her.
you know I was just like looking into cloth like diapers today. I'm like, what is this about?
It's
This
lit. Uh, and that's what I'm talking about, like things that will make us spend money over and over again on disposable things. Those are always the things that we're told are for us. But I
right,
spent maybe $300 total on her whole cloth diaper stash, and buying disposables for 2 years is like 2 grand. So I talk about that on my blog, but you know,
2 grand?
2 grand. Disposable diapers are expensive. Formula is expensive, and that's why they constantly tell us it's for us. Now, am I saying if you try that and you like that, that's
Right.
wrong. No, but just know you have other options, because right now it's like they feed us one option and don't give us the other.
And where do we find your blog?
TaraYvette.com. Two R's in Tara.
Perfect.
Tarrayvette. I talk a lot about cloth diapering on there. I'm not extra consistent with posting stuff on there, but I do have a whole section of cloth diapering and like making it easy, how you wash them, where you can buy them, have links to buy them, different price points and everything, if that's something that anybody's interested in, because it is such a money saver and I just can't believe it's not more popular.
Really? Okay. Well, we will have to say that conversation for another day. But thank you so much to the people in the chat. They're loving it, wishing you, well wishes and all of that. I have enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure this conversation may be helpful to a lot of people. Maybe somebody that never considered homeschooling may be doing so, or maybe even people, it could be somebody watching that before had projected onto somebody that thought about it, and maybe we will have these conversations differently. So that's a lot to be gained from that. But all right, y'all. So that is it. We're gonna get out of here. Make sure y'all go follow Tara over on Instagram. Her page is just super bubbly, family, happy plants. She's like, I don't know. She's one of those like Instagram, what do you call them? I can't even think of the word right now. She's like an influencer, y'all. She's like an influencer.
I
But
just want to influence people to be happy. Life is hard
yeah,
enough.
and you do that. You do that. You do a really good job of it, and I love it. And we need more of that. So, all right, y'all. We are out of here.
Thank
Bye.
you for having me.
You're welcome.